Laura Kuenssberg, the BBC's chief political editor, has been a source of ire for anyone opposed to the Conservatives or who simply expects the Tory-run BBC to adhere to its strict impartiality guidelines. Guidelines it has to respect in exchange for that coveted licence fee funding it gets. It's all in the Charter. Now, I say Tory-run BBC intentionally, not just in relation to Kuenssberg, but the fact its Director General is a former Conservative candidate and its chairman is a Tory donor. That kind of puts the writing on the wall for it in terms of its impartiality. It just isn't. But it gets away with it when it favours the government and only ever gets picked up on occasionally when someone dares speak out, presumably to keep up the pretence. But alleged events at Tory Party Conference, particularly surrounding Kuenssberg, have thrust her bias into the news once more. When the news correspondents are themselves becoming the news, there's clearly a problem. It was posted to Twitter in a now deleted tweet by Torygraph correspondent Dominic Penna that on the night Tory Conference closed, Laura Kuenssberg and Michael Gove had a dance-off and rap battle as one Tory MP sang Ice Ice Baby at karaoke, whilst Kuenssberg's BBC colleague Lewis Goodall then had a go at singing Dancing Queen whilst quipping, "Have we got any Tory scum in the audience?" and a swipe at comments made about the Tories by Angela Rayner the week before at Labour's party conference. Now, it might be news to some, but Dead-Eyed Ange didn't coin the phrase. It's trended numerous times for years now, and there's a lot to be said for calling a spade a spade. But this has all been categorically denied by the BBC, and Penna has since deleted the tweet, which is arguably the most suspicious part of this story. If it was factually correct, he would have no reason to take it down. He's doing his job, you would suggest. But if it is a joke, for one, don't give up the day job, Dom. For another, it clearly wasn't taken in the way intended. Myself, I think Penna was leaned on to delete it. And I'm not just saying that as a rotten lefty wanting to kick the right wing. I say that because there's more than one of these gossipy type tweets from Penna still up. He made a thread about them and only one tweet in the thread was deleted. This wasn't a one-off comment, and I can only surmise that it's because it exposes the blatant lack of impartiality at the Tory-run BBC, and they're desperate to keep up the pretense that it is still free and fearless. Further, the other tweet of this type from Penna still up also involves Michael Gove. Apparently people kept putting Gove's name forward to sing, but his team wouldn't let him do it, referring to a similar bit of Matt Hancock from a few years back that he apparently never recovered from. The only conclusion you can draw is that Dominic Penna's tweet was withdrawn because it implicated two BBC news correspondents, utterly exploding any sense of impartiality either of them possess, by getting far too friendly with government figures. The BBC is our national state broadcaster with a duty of impartiality to its viewers. It is a legal obligation on their part. When that is exposed, as here, to be obviously not the case, that raises serious questions, and to dodge them, the cover-up commenced. The BBC have denied the events. Penna's employer, the Torygraph, has denied the events. It just smacks of the right-wing journalists rallying around each other, having each other's back as one of their number forgets that and accidentally exposes the sham. We have incredibly biased media in this country. The Torygraph, the Scum, the Times, the Fail, the comically absurd Daily Express are all right-wing publications. They favour the Tories. But we know they favour the Tories. Others, through their actions, have supported them too, though claim otherwise. Worse, in a way, so-called liberal outlets like The Guardian. Left-wing outlets tend not to be mainstreamed, demonised by the dominance of the right-wing mainstream media as it is, and they're a lot smaller and have to punch seriously above their weight to get heard. But get heard they do. And you have examples such as the Morning Star, Tribune, Canary, Squawk Box, and Socialist Telly, of which I'm a proud part of. All are biased in their own way, though. Some are more clear about it than others. It's not a balanced picture by any means either. But the BBC has to be seen as impartial. And that's why when its journalists are seen acting in a way that is anything but, it's a problem. But it's a problem that goes much deeper. I mentioned the Director General before, a guy called Tim Davie. He stood for the Conservatives as a councillor in Hammersmith and Fulham in the 90s, as well as being former deputy chair of the party in that same area. This is not an impartial appointment now. Now, it can be argued that that was a long time ago. Allegiances can come and go, and taken as a single instance on its own, you might have a point. But worse, certainly, was the appointment in February of Richard Sharp, as BBC chairman, a former JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs banker, an advisor to Boris Johnson whilst London mayor, and an advisor to Rishi Sunak as chancellor, as well as having been director of the right-wing, conservative-supporting think tank Centre for Policy Studies. And he's donated £400,000 to the Conservative Party. He is blatantly not impartial. But who's going to do anything about it? It suits the right-wing governing regime we have right now to have a puppet BBC, and that's what they've got. Other BBC news figures are no better. Nick Robinson was a young conservative. Robbie Gibb left the BBC as news editor, where he oversaw Sunday politics and the Andrew Marr show and was involved with Newsnight, to go and work for Theresa May. His brother Nick is a serving Tory MP, and he's now back again at the BBC on its board. Andrew Marr himself has defined himself as a pampered white liberal, but also said he doesn't believe the BBC is impartial, and is also widely seen as a soft touch when it comes to interviewing governing ministers. But fundamentally, where BBC impartiality is being discussed, one of the first names to come up is inevitably that of Laura Kuenssberg. She is the political editor of BBC News. Dancing with Gove is one thing, but it's only one instance, and much of the ire concerning her came about to start with whilst Jeremy Corbyn led Labour. In 2017, she was ruled to have broken those BBC impartiality guidelines by giving the impression that Corbyn disagreed with the use of firearms by French police during the Paris riots of that year, which is the complete opposite of Corbyn's position. Now, to break the impartiality guidelines should have been a sacking offence. The BBC's impartiality is supposed to be upheld at all times. It is sacrosanct, supposedly, but it got walked all over. She got away with it. The BBC decided there was no intention to mislead, and she carried on. She was the subject of a petition to have her dismissed following revelations that the year before, in 2016, the live resignation of Labour MP Stephen Doughty on the Daily Politics show as part of the ongoing chicken coup against Corbyn had been pre-arranged by Kuenssberg. She undermined the ire of Omar Salem, who in 2019 confronted Boris Johnson about this government's treatment of the NHS by referring to him as a Labour activist when he was nothing of the sort. He's just a concerned citizen. The day before the general election in 2019, she made a comment saying postal ballot results were looking grim for Corbyn and Labour, despite opening said ballots the day before an election, breaches Electoral Commission guidelines, and commenting on them ahead of polling day is a criminal offence. The Met Police, and I covered the state of them under Cressida Dick's leadership in my last rant, could find no evidence of wrongdoing, despite it going out on the bloody telly. Then there was her anonymous Downing Street source, the infamous Downing Street source, which was for so long thought to be Dominic Cummings, only for Cummings to eventually all but confirm this through briefings to Kuenssberg, as he put it, to set the record straight. Kuenssberg is paid £229,000 a year, fully paid for by licence fee payers. For that, we get a political editor far too close to senior Tories, who crossed the line in election reporting and in reporting on Labour under Corbyn's leadership, getting away with it because the chummy ranks of the right-wing media circled around her to protect her. The Tory-run BBC saying nothing to see here. And even the Met Police with their Tory-appointed commissioner ignoring what many would regard as clear evidence of wrongdoing, seen by millions on the telly. Dominic Penna now says that night at Tory Conference was all a blur. Yet you only deleted the one gossipy tweet, Dom. Why is that? Why did it have to be the one that happened to implicate Laura must be protected Kuenssberg? She's not going to be sacked, folks. She's going to carry on doing what she's always done, and she'll continue to be shielded regardless of her future conduct. It's for you to decide whether or not to pay attention to that. I switched off the BBC in December of 2019 after that election. It isn't fit to call itself a news broadcaster, and certainly not fit to call itself impartial, and I've never looked back. The bias, the appallingly pro-Tory coverage was blatant. I cannot emphasize enough how much I believe this country will be so much better informed if more people simply switched off BBC News and went elsewhere.